Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who may not have noticed, I'm not here today. So, this is geometry. Let's go ahead and get out our notes. Ladies and gentlemen, as a warning, there may be a pop quiz on this material. This video is on YouTube, and the sub will be happy to provide the link so that if you need to, if you don't get it after seeing it the first time, you can go home tonight and watch it again and again and again. Again, you need to know this material. I spent the time to make this video. You are responsible for it. We'll go over questions tomorrow, but as for actually knowing the content, I won't be reteaching this. So today is 4/23/2013. This is Unit 3, Lesson 11. And our goal for today, students will be able to complete the square. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've been working on solving by factoring, and that's all well and good. However, some equations can't be solved by factoring. They don't factor. So, we have to have some other approach to solve a quadratic that does not factor. So today we're going to look at quadratics. First of all, standard form of the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay, that is the standard form of the quadratic equation. We've worked with this, we've done this. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so there we go, a little bit easier to see. That is the standard form of the quadratic equation. Today, we're going to take this one step at a time, and we're going to look at where a is equal to 1. So, the equation that we're going to be working with today is x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And I want to solve this for x. So, I want to end up with x equals something. The cool part about completing the square is it's very step by step. There are certain steps you take, and no matter what your numbers are, you're going to end up with the correct answer. To illustrate that, I'm going to solve this with absolutely no numbers. So B represents a number, C represents a number, and I'm going to do it using variables to represent those numbers to show that it doesn't matter what numbers you have. It's very formulaic in that you follow these steps, no matter what you have, it'll always work. So, first thing what we need to do is we need to get just our x terms on the left-hand side. To do that, we're going to remove this c term, okay, whatever the just number part is, I'm moving it to the other side of the equation. So I'm subtracting c from both sides. That's going to leave me with x squared plus bx is equal to negative c. Okay, so I subtracted c from both sides. Now, this is where it's called completing the square. I'm going to take a different color, and I'm going to take whatever my b is, I'm going to divide it in half, and then I'm going to square it. And I'm going to take this, whatever I get for that, the b term, the number I have for b, divide it in half, and square it. And what I have for that, I'm going to add to both sides. So I took whatever I had for b, cut it in half, and squared it, and then added it to both sides. So that's going to give me x squared plus bx plus whatever b over 2 squared was is equal to negative c plus whatever b over 2 squared is. Now, once I have here, I can use my factoring. What I have just created, in essence, I have just created a perfect square trinomial. Remember when we had something squared and something squared here? We could automatically factor that into whatever I had to square to get that, and whatever I had to square to get that. And then whatever the sign of this is, comes down and is the sign there. Okay, again, I'm going through that kind of fast, but we've done this before. I'm factoring this. It is a perfect square trinomial, which means I have something squared and something squared, and we had the formula that automatically factored into whatever I had to square to get x squared, whatever I had to square to get this. Well, b over 2 squared gives me b over 2 squared, so I can put b over 2 in here, and then whatever my sign was here, in this case it's plus, goes in there, and then on this side, I'm going to leave it like this because I can't simplify variables very easily, but you would simplify this side. Plus b over 2 squared, because that's just going to be an addition problem. Add the numbers. Now, in order to get x by itself, the next step is I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I would have x plus b over 2 squared is equal to negative c plus b over 2 squared. I just rewrote this, and I'm going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of something squared is going to leave me x plus b over 2 is equal to, now here's the cool part, don't forget it's plus or minus, and if you want to ask me why that is when I get back, I'll be happy to explain that. The square root of whatever this number was, negative c plus b over 2 squared. All x is almost by itself. The last thing I need to do is subtract b over 2 from both sides. That's going to leave me with x is equal to negative b over 2 plus or minus the square root of negative c plus b over 2 squared. And that's your answer. So I just completed the square for any and every square quadratic where a is equal to 1. And if you'll notice, this looks very similar to something that we know as the quadratic formula. That's a hint. Today, remember, let's go back. This works for any quadratic where a, the coefficient of the x squared term, is equal to 1. So, following those steps, you'll end up with an answer. Now, that's all well and good. The sub does have this written out on a piece of paper. If you need to look back at this, again, it's online. Now that we've done it for every single problem out there, let's do it for a specific problem. So, to do it for a specific problem, let's look at x squared. Let's try this. X squared minus 10x minus 26 is equal to 0. Again, I want to solve. If I tried to factor this right now, it is not factorable. There are no multiples of negative 26 that add to be negative 10. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So, or at least none that are easily found. So, we've got that. First step, get your x squared and your x terms. So I'm going to add 26 to both sides. That's going to leave me with x squared minus 10x, and I'm going to leave a space here, is equal to 26. The reason I'm going to leave a space is because now my next step is to find what b was. B was negative 10. Cut it in half, square it. Negative 10 cut in half is negative 5. Squared is positive 25. I'm going to take that 25 and I'm going to add it to both sides. Okay, added it to both sides. Now I can take this, it's a perfect square trinomial because this is 5 squared, x squared, and that automatically factors into x and 5, and then that's a negative, so that's going to be a negative squared. If you don't believe me, multiply that out, do your double distribution, you'll end up with this up here. Over here, 26 plus 25 is 51. Next step, take the square root of both sides. Square root, square root. Square root of something squared is just itself plus or minus the square root of 51. Okay. Add 5 to both sides. X is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 51. And a lot of times they'll actually break this up because that plus or minus means 5 plus the square root of 51. And so x equals 5 plus the square root of 51 and x equals 5 minus the square root of 51. Do you need to break it up? No. Might it help? Yes. Okay, again, ladies and gentlemen, please be taking notes. This is material you are responsible for. Let's do one more problem. Okay, here's the next problem. I want to look at x squared minus 2x plus 80 is equal to 0. Again, there are no real factors that multiply to be negative or to be positive 80, add to be negative 2. So we're going to complete the square. We're going to turn this into something that we can factor. Again, first step is to get rid of that c term, move it to the other side. That's going to leave me x squared minus 2x. I'm going to leave a space is equal to negative 80. Now to find out what I add to both sides, I'm going to take my b term, negative 2. I'm going to cut it in half, divide it by 2, and I'm going to square it. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. I'm going to take that positive 1 and I'm going to add it to both sides. Now this right here is a perfect square trinomial because 1 squared is 1. Something squared. That factors into whatever I had to square to get x, whatever I had to square to get 1, and then whatever that sign is goes right there. X minus 1 squared is equal to negative 79. I need to get rid of that squared, so I'm going to take the square root of both sides. That's going to leave me x minus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 79. Ladies and gentlemen, it's wrong without the plus or minus. Add 1 to both sides. Now, before I get there, I got to talk about this. Square root of a negative number. We can't do that. Okay? So what I can do is I can take this, and I'm going to just do it off to the side here. I'm going to take that square root of negative 79, and I'm going to break it up into 2 square roots. The square root of negative 1 times the square root of positive 79. I'm essentially pulling out that negative. Because remember, when you have radicals, you can do that inside times inside, outside times outside. So I'm kind of reversing it, pulling out that negative 1. And we said the square root of negative 1 is equal to what? I. Sorry, rhetorical question. So this becomes I times the square root of positive 79. And that is what we're going to use over here. So I'm going to rewrite it. X minus 1 is equal to plus or minus I times the square root of positive 79. It's an even root. I cannot leave the negative in there. Add 1 to both sides. X is equal to 1 plus or minus I times the square root of 79. Rewrite that. X equals 1 plus the I square root of 79. X equals 1 minus I square root of 79. And ladies and gentlemen, there's 3 examples of completing the square. If you need to, it's all over the internet. You can rewatch this video, and I will be happy to answer questions tomorrow. Good luck with your quiz tomorrow. For the remainder of the class, the sub is going to hand out a worksheet. The sub will let you know if you can work together or in groups or by yourself. And what you don't complete is homework. The sub has an answer key if you'd like to check your work to make sure you're on the right track. Good luck.